Welcome to the Health Fix podcast, where health junkies get their weekly fix of tips, tools, and techniques to have limitless energy, sharp minds, and fit physiques for life. Hey, health junkies. On this episode of the Health Fix podcast, you get me, Dr. Jannine Krause. Now, this podcast is going to be a little bit of a piggyback off of episode 546, where I was talking with Teresa Lear-Levine and Dr. Anna Marie Frank, and we were talking about a little thing that happened to me with my lab results. Since that podcast, I've had a lot of questions about the bomb I dropped that my lupus antibody showed up elevated. And a lot of folks have been asking me, well, what are you going to do? What does it mean? I'm noticing, a lot of people around me are having autoimmune conditions. What's the deal? So this podcast, I'm going to talk about autoimmune conditions, how they do seem to have a connection with hormone fluxes and what the heck is going on. So let's dive in. So around the time I turned 40, I got a card from my sister-in-law that said, "Welcome to your 40s. Your mystery illness will now begin." I didn't think much of it. I kind of laughed and was like, okay. Then my eyes glitched a little and I was like, oh, okay, I need readers or something to see. Okay. So my eyes, they're affected by getting older, but I didn't really, put much weight into it. I was like, okay, cool. And life went on and fast forward to 6 years later, I realized that, my gut wasn't doing too well last year, and I had tried a lot of different things and wasn't getting results. So I was like, I better do some testing to see what the heck is going on. And to my surprise, I ended up finding out that I had elevated lupus antibodies. And I was like, okay. Well, what happens when you have elevated antibodies? Well, to something that's an autoimmune condition, your body's attacking itself. So you got to go back to why is it doing that? Now, I am not going to put up a sign and start wearing t-shirts that say, I have lupus, and start going down that route, because I don't want to identify with any diagnosis ever. So what did I do? Well, I first went to lifestyle and went, okay, with many autoimmune conditions, why do they show up? Well, there's a stress component. There's also a very strong connection to ACEs, so adverse childhood events. I would say I didn't really have any ACEs that are significant enough to really warrant that to make it sense for me. But for some of you listening, that may be. Now, this is childhood trauma, parent who is abusive, verbal, physical abuse, you name it. Any adverse childhood event could set you up for an autoimmune condition because of the stress that puts on the body. Now, another stressor is life stress, right? And for many people who are entrepreneurs or work for themselves, we can put a lot of stress on ourselves to make ends meet, really just thrive. And I'd be lying if I said that being an entrepreneur was easy for me. It's been a little bit of a struggle, and that's okay. But it does bring some stress. So I looked at that one. Okay, we've got that. Now, what else? Well, I am going through perimenopause. My hormone levels have been progressively declining. And I think at certain points, I've probably had some peaks and drops, to be honest, because heavy periods, clots, not being able to leave your house when you have your period, or having to have black pants. That's a pretty good indication that you've got a heavy bleed going on, and heavy bleeds are higher levels of estrogen. So I looked into that and went, okay, could there be something going on with hormones? And sure enough, there's a lot of research out there in terms of hormone fluctuations as they pertain to autoimmune conditions. In fact, there's a whole study that shows that during hormone transitions in a female's life, we will be more prone to an autoimmune condition. So puberty, pregnancy, and menopause. Fascinating. Now, I'm going to put that in the podcast notes at drjkrausend.com. So if you're interested in checking out the research that I'm pouring over, by all means, check that out. I do want to make sure that as I move forward with the podcast, we have a lot of research-backed data here, because it is very important to have something that's not just hearsay, right? Now, I'll tell you if I find it as my personal opinion and something I've seen in my office. And I'll be honest with you, I have seen a rise in autoimmune conditions. Is it because my population of patients is getting older? Maybe. Is it because a lot of them are going through perimenopause and menopause? Maybe. Is it because of more stress, environment? I would say D, all of the above. Like, absolutely. We have many factors that can contribute to autoimmune conditions, and especially something called hormone disruptors. Hormone disruptors are chemicals that are often in things like lotions or upscale skincare, like methylparaben and ethylparaben, which are also in bioidentical hormones that are coming from pharmacies. Estrase is a big one. Yeah. What? We're trying to put hormones on folks and support them, and then we've got chemicals that are hormone disruptors? Yes, mind blown and annoying. So hormone disruptors can be a huge factor, and these can be anything from microwaving plastic, going to a restaurant that microwaves or heats up plastic. These are all things that can disrupt your chemicals or your hormones. These are chemicals that can disrupt your hormones. Sorry about that. But also, like, this can happen too if you're doing a lot of dry cleaning and it's not a green cleaning place. Um, there are many things that can be disrupting your hormone balance, from cleansers to cleaners to shampoo. The Environmental Working Group has a great website, ewg.org. You can see all the different things as to if your products are working well there, or you could get the Yucca, YUKA app, and that'll tell you a ton of information about what you may be using and if it has some chemical disruptors in it that could be messing with your hormones. So when I look at the big picture with autoimmune conditions, I definitely do think that we do need to be looking at hormone levels. We need to be looking at toxicity levels. Anything from heavy metals all the way down to the hormone disruptors I described. Now, with LA fires right now, that fire material, all those things are getting up into the atmosphere. And it's going to blow from, because we have the jet stream from west to east, it's going to blow across the states. This is something to be thinking about right now. And it is very important to be filtering the air in your home and really looking at your air quality. I have a podcast with the folks from Hypo Air, and I also have a podcast with Seth Jones where we're talking about mold and building related illness, which is my perfect segue into the other department in which your hormones can be disrupted and you can end up having some issues with autoimmune stuff going on. Now, these are all kind of, when I look at autoimmune markers coming up on folks, I want folks to be thinking like it's like a light on a dashboard on your car, being like the warning light. It doesn't mean you have to attach yourself to that illness. Now, of course, if you are suffering from serious mystery illness symptoms and you're really trying to get a diagnosis nailed down to know where to go, where to start with your plethora of symptoms, of course, I can see where that's beneficial. But if you've kind of got one thing that's bugging you, it's not a ton of different symptoms, your symptoms aren't so severe that you can't function, and your autoimmune antibodies aren't like so high that they are off the rails. And by this, I mean like 1 to 80. That is a ratio of autoimmune antibodies. I see that as a blip in the system, not a big deal. And just a warning light that says, hey, time to take care of you. And so in the scheme of things, you may be thinking like, why would I even want to test autoimmune antibodies? I don't think you have to. The only reason I ran it is because I wanted to see if there was a history with myself going on with autoimmune antibodies and see if things were still continuing, because I've had autoimmune antibodies show up before. So in my case, I'm going, all right, well, clearly there is something up here. Now, for a lot of people with autoimmune conditions, it kind of can be a plethora of fatigue. Maybe it could be skin stuff. Maybe it could be hives. Maybe there could be weight gain. Maybe, we're looking at a combination of like mystery symptoms that just don't even flow together. In this case, this is where some advanced testing, I think, would be useful, especially looking, is there an insulin resistance? Is there a leptin resistance? We now know that diabetes type 1 can go autoimmune on folks. We can end up with an adult onset type 1 diabetes. We can also end up with psoriasis, which is a skin condition that is autoimmune. We can end up with, MS, lupus, autoimmune thyroid conditions. There's a lot there. I mean, 85% to 90% of the hypothyroid conditions that are diagnosed right now are autoimmune based Hashimoto's. So Hashimoto's thyroiditis. Some docs in the conventional medicine space are like, I won't even test the antibodies because I know that most people have it, which is crazy to think that that high of a percentage. And in fact, in doing research for this podcast, I also found that over 85% of the individuals diagnosed with autoimmune conditions are women. The ratio is very, very heavily scaled towards women. So why is that? Estrogen. Men have estrogen too, but us ladies, our estrogen levels can vary and wildly vary as we're headed from perimenopause into menopause and beyond. And I'm wondering if there's a pretty clear connection there between fluctuating levels. Now, prolactin levels, which is a hormone that comes out of the pituitary in the brain, that can also impact autoimmune conditions. And that one, oftentimes with a prolactinoma, which is a tumor that can show up, what we'll see is that women will have milk coming from their breasts as it is involved in lactation. And perhaps these women maybe never even had children, but they're releasing milk from their breasts. I'm like, what is going on? That's a sign of something going on seriously with prolactin in the brain, a prolactinoma, and you can take care of that pretty easily. But on an autoimmune level, you can have higher than normal levels of prolactin without a tumor in the pituitary. And that's kind of wild. It's one of the markers to look for to see, like, okay, is this something going on? Now, prolactin also has other homeostasis, so balance mechanisms that it's in charge of in the body too, and lots of them. So I'm not going to go into it, but it's wise to look at prolactin. It's wise to look at leptin to see if leptin is elevated, especially if you're struggling with weight gain and you're like hungry all the time and you're like, what is going on? That may be a factor there. What's crazy about autoimmune conditions is that there's so much overlap between perimenopause and menopause and autoimmune condition symptoms. They overlap quite a bit. So how do you tease out which one's which? Well, I'm almost getting to the point of wondering if maybe really at the root of a lot of these autoimmune conditions is hormone balance. And if we were able to achieve hormone balance and continue it throughout perimenopause, menopause, and beyond, we may be able to keep a lot of the severe autoimmune conditions at bay. Because if you look at research, what you also will find is that a lot of autoimmune conditions actually reduce in severity as someone gets through menopause and beyond, which is wild. Because as I just stated earlier in the podcast, like the fluctuations are what is linked to the onset of these conditions. So one of my biggest reasons for wanting to do this podcast to talk about autoimmune conditions is getting the importance of getting your hormones looked at and really working on it. Either it's naturally, or maybe you're doing some bioidenticals and maybe you're microdosing it. Maybe you're doing all herbs. That's totally fine too. I think the bottom line here is seeing how can you work on that. And the other factor is also looking at cortisol. And how does cortisol play into this? Because cortisol is such a big factor as we get older, and stressors let's say compound, right? Maybe you're in what's been stated as the sandwich generation, where you've got parents that you're taking care of and you're still taking care of kids. I don't have any kids, but I have a parent that I'm taking care of, and it's fun some days, and other days you're just like, um how can I prevent myself from having issues and causing trouble? So there's so many things to be thinking about, and I don't want folks to get overwhelmed. I really want you to be thinking like, okay, all right, so perhaps I'm going through perimenopause. Perhaps my hormones are up and down. How can I balance them out? Can I use seed cycling? So this is using flax, chia, pumpkin seed the first half of the cycle, and using sunflower sesame the second half? Could you be using Bia Wellness, which is a company that sells 2 bags, one for the first half of the cycle and one for the second half of the cycle, and makes it super easy to do seed cycling. Now, maybe that's the case, but maybe you're in menopause and you're like, man, I am wondering, like, do I have an autoimmune condition? My skin's freaking out. I've got hives, I've got rashes, and they keep coming out of nowhere. And maybe they're affecting your eyes, and maybe they're affecting the outside of your eyes. Maybe they're affecting your ears or behind your ears. That is a autoimmune effect that can happen where your body shifts towards something called Th2 dominance. Th2 dominance is your immune system response that's highly related to an inflammatory IgE, so allergic type of response. Now, a lot of folks will talk about Th1 versus Th2 immune responses. Th1 is more like the killing response to kill down things like bacteria and viruses, whereas Th2 is more of our allergic dominance state. And I find that for a lot of women, we spend time in that allergic dominant state in perimenopause and into menopause and beyond. Could this be another factor for why autoimmune conditions show up in addition to the hormones? Absolutely. Absolutely. And one of the things that I will propose, in relation to my gut, I suspect I ended up with a little bit of a parasite the first month of January of 2024, and I couldn't kick it. And my immune system just kept popping off and freaking out. Now, I didn't end up going towards psoriasis or having rashes, but I was having a lot of weird gut inflammation symptoms that were characteristic of a food, like a chronic food sensitivity or almost borderline SIBO. So SIBO is small intestine bowel overgrowth. For those of you who don't know what SIBO is, there's also SIFO, small intestine fungal overgrowth. And I think at the root of people trying to kill the SIBO and kill Candida and kill all these things over and over again and not getting results, I think it's at the root of the autoimmune picture and the Th2 picture, needing to work on your Th2 allergic response. So, what am I proposing as a possible way to prevent, but also work on these mystery symptoms that show up, especially with the gut stuff, especially with the rashy stuff and hives? And acetylcysteine. Also looking at, so NAC, which was very popular as an amino acid to help with symptoms of COVID. Now, also looking at what do we do in respect to other things that can help lower this Th2 response, really watching stress, watching the neurological side of things, looking at your boundaries. When I look at my business, I love my clients so much, but sometimes boundaries are a thing because I want to help at all times of day and all times of night, which impedes on my life, right? And so you want to really start thinking about, are there some places where your boundaries are getting broken, where you're overstepping, or where you're allowing someone to overstep on you? And that's more of the case in the case of autoimmune conditions. And this is something that, women, as women, we like to take care of folks. That's like our born, we're born into that caregiver role. And unfortunately, that's where a lot of self boundaries and self care really go off the rails. And if you listen to my episode 546 with Teresa Lear Levine and Dr. Anna Marie Frank, you probably heard me talk about trying to sneak in as many patients as possible, one, to help, but also because for insurance to be able to make a living, I do have to do that. And it comes at a price. It comes at a price, and that's okay. I know now. Now, being busy, this is another factor. And this is where I also think that some of what happened with me may resonate with you. And this is why I'm telling my story here is, we get busy and meal prep tends to get tricky. I would be lying if I said that at this stage in my life, I enjoy cooking. I've gotten to the point where I'm like, it's just another thing. And that's a sign you're just busy. It's a sign that, that's another thing you have to do. And in my 20s, I loved cooking. I would spend hours meal prepping because it was fun. But as I started getting in my 30s and late 30s, early 40s, I was like, oh, this sucks. And that can create a problem because now you're going to go more towards convenience foods and not making enough time to take care of you and the foods that you your body needs. And it can also create problems because if you eat out more, you're going to get, disruptors, hormone disruptors, and we're also going to have a lot of impact on the liver, which is where I'm going to round out this podcast, because I've had a podcast where I talked about fatty liver and how I do believe that this is one of the reasons why women gain weight into perimenopause and beyond and struggle. Now, the liver is our organ of detox. How do we get rid of histamines if we have allergy stuff popping up from a dominant Th2 response? The liver. So if the liver is not able to clear things, now we've got double trouble. And the liver is also the place where we make and detox hormones. We also detox hormones through methylation, and we detox a lot of stuff through methylation and transsulfuration, and all this happens in the liver. So if that liver is not doing what it needs to do and it's backed up, even more trouble for the situation going on here. And then if I didn't have one more thing to add to it, if our microbiome is off, like our gut bugs are off because maybe we got a parasite, maybe we, ended up having a ton of food sensitivity reactions and our gut microbiome was thrown off, that can back up the liver too. And so we've got a lot of different things going on here. Not to mention, I hear from probably, I would say, a little more than half of my clients, and myself included, that sugar cravings are real when we're stressed. We want carbs, we want sugar, we want, salt or fat carbs, or we want sweet carbs. And that doesn't help with liver health, because the more we rely on those things, the more, we're grabbing quick convenience foods. Now we've got that, plus the endocrine disruptors that may be in the plastics, that may be in, heating up of foods that you bought at, say, a restaurant or that you're getting from a restaurant or a fast food place. Now you might be thinking, oh my gosh, there's just so much to think about. There is, but I have hope that we can minimize this. We can clean up our diets. That's easy enough to do now. We have a lot of access to organic foods. It's not like it used to be. You can vote with your wallet too by opting for organic foods and foods that don't have dyes and chemicals in them. Same thing goes for your skincare routines. I discovered that some of the skincare products that I was using for years and years in my late 30s and leading up to my wedding in particular had hormone disruptors in them. They had parabens. And as I mentioned in the beginning, parabens are a problem. They're in estrase, the bioidentical hormone cream. If you're putting that on your face every single day and it's in multiple products of a 10-step protocol that you've been using for years, this is a problem. And I think that might have contributed to things as well. Good news is that we have options to choose better products. That Yucca app I mentioned before, you can use to see what's in your products. I use a moisturizing cream now that is completely non-toxic from Finley and Green. I absolutely love that stuff. So, it's really important to look at how you can control what you can control, right? We can't necessarily control what's in our air, but we can control the air in our homes. We can't necessarily control what's in our water, but we can filter it, which is another big source of hormone disruptors, by the way. So as a whole, with autoimmune conditions, we have a lot we can control here. And it might feel like you're out of control. You might feel like your body's out of control. You can feel like your body is betraying you as you get older. And you're like, what in the heck is going on? Well, I just mentioned multiple things you can control. You can also work on your boundaries. You can work on your stress management. Probably the hardest thing to do. I'll fully, own that. But it is something to take baby steps and start working on that. Boundaries first. Like, holy cow. I see so many women getting stepped all over and really just running ragged, trying to help out family, friends, everybody. And like, man, I hear you. I hear you. Those of us with big hearts suffer the worst, I think, because we just really want to help. And I get it. So when you've got all of these things kind of showing up, like I mentioned before, it's wise to just get the testing done. Know where your hormones are at. So sex hormones is what I'm talking about. So estrogens, estrone, estradiol. You want to know what your DHEA sulfate is up to. You want to know what your testosterone free and total is doing. You want to know what sex hormone binding globulin is doing. Those are your main hormones to test. You also want to look at your thyroid, your TSH, which is your brain to thyroid signaling. You want to look at free T3. You want to look at free T4. Free T4 is what comes directly out of the thyroid. It gets converted to T3, which is your most active thyroid hormone. You want to know T3 uptake. Are your cells bringing in things? You want to know your antibodies to your thyroid. So anti-TPOs, which is to the enzyme from T4 to T3. You want to know thyroglobulin antibody, the attack on the thyroid. You want to know ANA, which is anti-nuclear antibodies with reflex. What that test is it'll screen for anti-nuclear antibodies. You'll get a reflex, meaning it'll go down a particular angle if it comes up positive. And then if it's only lightly positive, you can be like, okay, it's dashboard light. I need to take care of things. Or if it's really high, then I recommend going to a higher level test that's more sensitive than like LabCorp Quest. It's called Advise, and repeating your test and seeing what's going on and seeing if that comes back up. If things get messy and like you've got one positive test and you've got a negative on the other, I would say, okay, warning light. This means time to take care of you. Make some changes in life, work on boundaries, work on yourself, work on cleaning up your diet, your environment, get rid of your energy vampire friends, coworkers, etc. Family members if you have to. Sounds mean, but here's the deal. Like if someone's going to suck the energy out of you, they will also suck your health out of you. Hands down. Tough love there, but that is the truth. I see it over and over again. And I've seen it in my own life too. So autoimmune conditions, I don't think are as big of a panic button as we need to put into them. Sure, they can be debilitating. I work with my pal Karen Dwyer on the MS to Success program. I am one of the guest speakers. MS is serious. Advanced lupus is serious. But if we can catch it early and work on taking care of ourselves, I believe we can turn things around. I truly believe that it is possible to not end up going down a pathway that can lead to severe illness. And I think even if you've gotten to that point, you can still turn it around too by looking at the factors that I mentioned today on the podcast. Now, my next podcast, I have Nicole Bonneville coming on, and she was on my podcast. I was on hers for a long time ago, and she's got some developments with chronic urticaria, which is hives. And I'm going to have her share her story just so you can hear a little bit from another perspective on her journey of exploration into what is going on. And while immune conditions and mystery illness can be incredibly expensive and incredibly frustrating, I want you to know I hear you. And the truth is there are solutions. There aren't quick fixes, but you can look at things and go, okay, how can I sequentially improve my health by looking at my environment, my energy levels as it relates to how I interact with people who's sucking me dry of energy, and your boundaries. You can also look at your diet and what could you improve to clean it up a little bit. Same thing goes, like I said, environment with air and water. And then it's looking at, okay, what is showing up in your labs? And if you're looking at specific conditions, okay, what of your symptoms match these particular conditions, whether it's lupus, whether it's Sjogren's, whether it's, psoriasis. Okay, great. Look at your hormones. Look at your thyroid hormones. Does anything else match up? Chances are you may be able to make some changes on how you could support your thyroid, how you could support your liver, how you could support your adrenal glands. They're in charge of fight or flight. Your liver's in charge of detox. If you've got a fatty liver, I mentioned testing insulin and fasting insulin in particular and seeing what's going on there, your liver enzymes. A couple of podcasts ago when I talk about fatty liver, I talk all about looking into that. So I will have the notes here in the podcast notes at drjkrauseND.com with what to look for and how to really tackle this, because I truly believe that autoimmune conditions are a wake-up call that your body's basically saying, hey, I need some TLC in one place or the other and help me balance my hormones, help me with my gut, help me with my liver, and help me with my boundaries and my stress management. It's just a wake-up call. And I think over time, we all can really turn things around. Now, you may be thinking or listening to this and going like, I can't even get out of bed. I don't feel that great right now. If that is you, I hear you. I understand. It is incredibly frustrating. And when no one knows what's going on with you, it's even more frustrating. But I want you to open your mind a little bit to the fact that autoimmune stuff is just a warning light on your dashboard, just like your car, just a warning light. It's check engine light. See what's going on. Look under the hood. All right. So if you're interested in figuring this out, you can head over to my podcast notes at drjkrauseND.com. If you want some additional support, this is what I'm doing, working on mystery illnesses with the founder of the Center for Human Restoration, Dr. Laura Connor, up in Crandon, Wisconsin. We do take telehealth visits, and if you're in the Wisconsin area, come on over and visit us. This is the specialty there. We are looking at what is going on, working on helping to identify, do we have parasites? Do we have bugs like bacteria, virus, Lyme, things of that nature impeding your ability to get better? And can we help you to peel off those layers and restore your health? It is absolutely possible. I've seen in just the few months of working with my friend, Dr. Laura Connor, how many people have had their lives changed by just looking under the hood and going, okay, this is the direction I need to go. So hopefully I'll get her on the podcast here soon. This was a long-winded one, I think, for me, but I really hope that you guys have a different perspective on the concept of mystery illness, and could a lot of these symptoms be linked to hormones and nervous system and boundaries? And might we have a way to turn things around versus identify with these autoimmune conditions right off the bat? Something to think about. All right. You've survived another episode of the Health Fix podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jannine Krause. If you like this podcast, help us spread the word. Please hit subscribe, rate us, let me know what you think. And I'd love to hear what you guys want to learn about even more, because this podcast kind of came out of folks messaging me and saying, hey, what's going on with you and autoimmune antibodies, and what are you going to do? So now you know what I'm going to do and what I'm going to recommend to folks. And now you have it. All right. Have a great day, whatever you're doing. Hey, fellow health junkie. Thanks for listening to the Health Fix podcast. If you enjoyed tuning in, please help support me to get the word out about the podcast. Subscribe, rate, and review, and just get that word out. Thanks again for listening.